welcome to Relatable Situations. I'm your host Juan, and I am happy to have our guest Jake of the Jake Diles Show. Jake, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good, Juan. How are you doing, man?
I am good. I'm really excited about this time together. I've been looking forward to talking to you. Just to give my audience an idea of who Jake is, because I'm sure you're thinking, who is Jake Diles? Who is he? Okay, so if you don't know already, you soon will. Jake is I'm not sure how I would label him. He is probably a truist, a person who believes in truth, who understands the importance of knowing your abilities and where you fit in this crazy world of ours, and how you can utilize your own skill set to understand your place in the world. Just to give a little bit of backstory, if you don't mind, Jake, I want to share with the audience how I came across you, and how, to some degree, it changed my thinking, not only about what Jake was talking about, but how I felt. Okay, so I have recently moved into the TikTok world. I was not a TikToker before, but I recently started hopping on the TikTok and found it very interesting. A lot of information, a lot of folks sharing some stuff that if you're not on TikTok, or if you haven't checked it out, you may want to check it out. But I came across one of, and I got to tell y'all, for those who have listened to my show, who have watched me, I am a very open and emotional person who has no problem crying. I was on a podcast, side note, I was on a podcast the other day, Jake, and one of the things that the guys, it was all four guys, right? And one of the things that they talked about, which I didn't realize that they actually, watched me and listened to my podcast, but they said, Juan is a true guy. He has no problem crying on his podcast. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. But I said, no. I said, you know what? Hey, that's me. I mean, I'm going to be real. I am going to share my emotions with you. And if that means that at that moment I'm feeling the emotion of tears, whether it be because of happiness, whether it be because of sadness, I'm going to go ahead and let it out. And I'm hoping that those who can appreciate ride with me. And if you don't, you have options. We all have options. But I'm going to be one no matter what. So anyway, back to Jake. I digress. So I came across Jake's post, one of his posts, and it's not even the one that is the most popular, which I'm shocked, but it was a very popular post. It has tens of thousands of views, and he was talking about you being, or me being, because he was talking to me. I felt like this is just one. Jake's talking only to one, and he was talking about, you're right where you need to be.
Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Everything. Once this game is over, all the pieces go back inside the box. So why are you taking everything so seriously? You've allowed yourselves to separate each other by meaningless, senseless things. In the grand scheme of it all, when you look at it and say, you're a different color, which means you're different than me, sounds so silly. Don't allow yourself to become distracted by all these silly, petty, worthless things. Because at the end of it all, does most of it really matter? Perception is reality. What we see, what we perceive, we define as real. But is it really real? Everything that's out here, everything in your day, has been constructed and built since before your time. We came up with all of it. It's all made up. It came out of somebody's head. And again, by the time the game is over, all those pieces are going to go back into the box. You are here in this time, in this place, in this time, for a reason. There is no other time, no other place from which you could have been put. This is the perfect spot for you and opportunity. Understand that the things that are on your shoulders because you can handle them. Because you are far much stronger than what you think you are. And no other person out here could handle these things quite the way that you will. Growing wiser is realizing that you must not focus on things of the past. Those things have already happened. Those things are over. You cannot go back and change it. You can only go forward and alter what happens then. Realize that you are here to make mistakes and learn from them. And understand that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you will never be perfect. So put aside the things you think you care about, because you're taking yourself way too seriously. You are meant for a much, much higher purpose. Maybe it's time you acted like it. Things are changing. Things will always change. As I always say, there's nothing new under the sun. Anything that has happened before, and it will happen again. But understand, you're here right now for a reason. Find out what it is. Take advantage of that. Live your life and be very happy.
You're taking yourself way too seriously. You really have to understand that things are happening for a reason, and it's not by accident, and it will work out. You are basically, he was telling Juan that Juan is stronger than what he knows. And this is something that I have shared with people often. I mean, a lot, especially in my relationship coaching. I talk about the fact, primarily when I'm coaching with women, you're stronger than what you know. And I needed to hear that at that moment, because I was having a moment where I wasn't feeling so strong. So Jake kind of, knocked me on the head and said, Juan, you are stronger than what you know. I've been talking for a minute because I'm so excited to have him on. Jake, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I kind of I kind of learned early on not to question things.
Okay.
And I to kind of speak on what you were referring to is I'm a very big believer in not believing the usual thought process of things don't happen to you, everything happens for you. And I think once people kind of get in that mindset and they realize exactly what that means, it opens up a different world of perspectives. And I think it challenges us to have some more acceptance with our lives and realize that we can't take everything so seriously. That the way I explained it to a group of people I was talking to just last night was that, look, things are tough. Life is hard for everybody. It doesn't demean the process for anybody else. Nobody else is this isn't a race. Nobody's behind, nobody's ahead. We all have different lives, we have different perspectives. We're all dealing with different challenges in our own ways. So this is not a race. This is a team effort. And the way that I kind of explained it is, look, it could be one of two things. You could look at this one of two ways. You could be driving. You could be going accidentally, 10 miles over, and you get pulled over. And you're on your way to work. So on top of that, you get a speeding ticket, and let's say you're 10 minutes late to work. And you could take that and you could say, why does this happen to me? Instead, very, very much consider the possibility of, I need to understand why this happened for me.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just nothing, or maybe it was because getting that ticket saved me from this semi who's crossing traffic, whose brakes failed, who would have barreled right into my car because I was in a hurry to get to work. And maybe this happened for me to save my life because I'm meant for bigger and more important things.
Wow. Jake, as you were saying that, I kind of knew where you were going a little bit, and it took me back to my situation, and I'm not going to go too far off because I want to be focused on you. But for those who don't know me or who haven't watched my other videos, I talk about my situation with my face and what happened. I had a very serious car accident, Jake, and it caused paralysis in my face.
Mm-hmm.
And for many, many years, Jake, I went through a lot of depression behind this. I was, prior to that, I was, always smiling, always, not necessarily an outgoing person, but somebody who was not afraid to share, himself. After the accident, I was not that person. But anyway, There were many times, Jake, where I thought to myself, why did this happen to me? I get that I was in a car accident. I get that. It wasn't my fault. But why am I left with this scar that pretty much at this point may be for the rest of my life, where I literally cannot smile in the normal fashion? Why is that my life? And, you know, you and I talked about this offline when we talked about that that fork in the road, so to speak, where, you know, if you go left, you know, your life could change in a totally different way. If you go right, you know, things would happen in a different way. Kind of like what you talked about on one of your posts, where you. Sorry, again, side note, y'all. It's so much I want to talk about with Jake, so much. But on one of Jake's posts, he literally had the Matrix voice down, and he looked like one of the characters from the Matrix. And he talked about the red pill, the green pill, and you know, as he was doing that, I'm like, wow. First off, was this guy on the Matrix? Because because he looks and sounds just like the characters on the movie, but he has this nailed. And more importantly than all that, what he's talking about is spot on. So my point in sharing that story about me and my face is, okay, so I lost my ability to smile in a traditional way, but because of it, it allowed me the opportunity to travel because I was off of work. I couldn't work. I used to be a pretty decent salesperson, you know, the six figures and all that other stuff. But because of the accident, I couldn't do what I normally do because for a long time, I mean, my mouth is twisted now, but it was really contorted, and I really couldn't talk in a normal way. Well, they left me a lot of free time. That allowed me to travel to the Dominican Republic and meet my wife, who I'm still married to now, I think 13 years later. So
Wonderful.
my point is, you're right. Had that accident not have happened, there's a good chance I wouldn't have met this beautiful person and had my son and my daughter and, you know, everything that comes along with that. So although, yeah, I lost the ability to smile in a traditional way, I gained so much in that I have a whole family now. I have, you know, a life that I may not have, you know, had if I continued in that same path. So I totally tie in with what you're talking about in terms of we're right where we're supposed to be. As rough
Hmm.
as experience was for me, it was supposed to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and the good news, God allowed me to still be here. I'm still here, able to have a great conversation with a guy that I admire. So I kind of took the mic from you, Mike. I'm sorry. I took the mic from you, Jake.
You know,
Here it
you're
is back.
fine.
So I wanted to get to also. I wanted to give people a bit of a understanding of where you come from because your background is dynamic and exciting and a little bit different than what you would expect from someone who seems to be so well grounded. So could you tell a little bit about your background?
Yeah. You know, to start out as a kid, you know, I'll say we didn't grow up poor. We had what we needed, but we had everything in moderation, but nothing in excess. We had everything we needed, and we were very happy. I had a very good family structure. Mom and dad were married for almost 30 years.
Wow.
My dad passed away in 2015.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But my, you know, my father figure at home was I had a very strong father figure. He was always there for us. He always provided, and he always, you know, he was a straight up honest honest man,
Yeah.
and gave us a very good foundation, my brother and I. But as a young teenager, I got picked up and started a career in the modeling industry, and I pursued that and became an international model, and shaped that also into an acting career as well. And in between that, I started a full-time career as a jail officer. So I worked in law enforcement for about 10 years.
Wow.
Since then, I've kind of started to pursue other interests. I've left law enforcement, and now that I've got a family and 3 kids, I can't do the travel work. So I got into trade work, and actually, as it stands, I'm a certified chimney sweep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how long you're going to be doing the chimney sweep thing, only because your social media and what you have to say is so impactful. Um, we were talking about, well, I was talking about the fact that one of your posts in particular, I mean, as they say, I guess, it went viral and it
Mhm.
got millions and still getting millions and millions of views. Um, and that one was a little bit different than the, I mean, I guess it wasn't necessarily different, but you were talking about different subject matter than what you were doing regarding the mindfulness. That one I think was more about what's going on with our world, how things are changing.
Mhm.
Um, what do you, for as much as you feel comfortable sharing, what do you want to say about that? Because as I was watching that, first off, you just like you intended and what you said, you made me think.
Mhm.
But more than that, it made me a little bit I guess scared is the best word, because some of the things that you talked about is like, you know what, until he brought that up, I didn't pay attention to that. And you actually say in your post, pay attention, look around, make the connections. So
Mhm.
can you talk a bit about that?
How many things need to happen simultaneously before you start to actually look around and say, what's going on? Ask yourselves why 1.5 million parents pulled their children out of public schools. Ask yourself why Camp Atterbury is looking to hire people at $3,500 a week to work there. Ask yourself why all of our precious cargo is sitting docked, waiting to make entry, and not being allowed to across the entirety of the East and West Coast, all the way down to South America. Ask yourself why a lot of well-known people are attaching themselves to the Petito case. Ask yourself why you can't find groceries that you normally shop for. Ask yourself why a whistleblower came out, and then just a few hours later, Facebook has their servers shut down for 6 hours, losing $220,000 every minute. And then ask yourself why magically all of a sudden are people pushing for further censorship on Facebook. Ask yourself why you can report your neighbor for looking like they're in canning season. Ask yourself why this is channel number 3 for me, because originally I pulled in 125,000 followers in 4 days and 5 million views across the channel in the span of 4 days, causing an international stir and becoming Google's #1 top search query for 3 days in a row, only to have me disappear. And then, on channel number 2, why I made it to 25,000, put out other tidbits of information, only to have one alleged strike against me to appeal, have it be approved, then the very next day have the channel completely removed. You're never going to hear the real news on your TV. You're never going to hear the real news from your radio. Once again, the magician wants you to pay attention to this, so you won't see the actual deception happening here. And once again, I ask you, how many things have to simultaneously happen for you to understand that things are happening that are going to directly affect you no matter what your belief system is? They don't care about you. They don't care what your beliefs are. They don't care what you like. They don't care what you don't like. They don't care what you prefer. They don't care what you don't prefer. They do not care about you. And the sooner that you realize that, the sooner you become more free. Crazy is a dismissive word on purpose. We use it to dismiss things. The people that we used that word for a year to 6 months ago are now proving to be right. How many things have to happen?
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with being allowed to only say so much depending on the platform we're on.
Right.
The other part is because I genuinely have everyone's best interest in mind. My understanding is that when things are spoon-fed to us, we value it much less than when we have to work for it and when we earn it on our own doing. So partially it was basically to avoid getting banned again for the third time around. And
Okay.
the other part was to absolutely get you to think. And anybody who would stake a lot of value in critically thinking has done exactly that. They did exactly what you said. Was I sat and I thought about this, and it really opened my eyes to some things. And while it does, I'll admit it does seem kind of Matrix-esque, and it is that way in its intent. It is designed that way to get you to think and to ponder and to remember that you can think critically on your feet.
Yeah.
But it's touching on some subjects that, while they might seem a little bit scary, it is meant in all of its intent to make you uneasy for a very positive reason. And it's to make you uneasy enough to say, well, I should look into this,
Right.
because it may lead me to do and learn other things. So it's not one of those shock value videos. It's me just being very straight up and honest and saying, look, this is what's currently happening. This is a fork in the road. And one way we're going to be happy, and the other way it's going to be very difficult. And depending on how you treat this or any other moment that comes like this as an impasse, and decide which way you want to take it, is how we dictate our future from here.
Yeah. So one of the things that you talked about, that since you mentioned it, because I'd heard, little blurbs about it on the news or what have you, which, that in itself, I don't know that I've understood up to this time in my life that, as you just said, with the news, a lot of it is spoon-fed to us. We get what they want us to get. Not to get too political with it, but, there's a lot of things that can be spun in a way that it gives the storyline that they want to drive. They is, but we'll just say they at this point. But one of the things that you talked about that made me start paying a bit more attention was the amount of cargo that is not coming into the country right now, the imports, and how they're kind of sitting offshore a little bit in ships, just kind of idly sitting there. And the more that I started paying attention to that, I started coming across other videos that, there have been reasons why those goods have not been brought into the country. And some of the reasons that we've been told is that there's just not enough truckers. There's just not enough people to offload the stuff. And then I see this video that another person put out where they're like, here's the truth. It was the name of the post, and this gentleman actually was recording I guess it was a docking area where there was like at least 70, 80 trucks just sitting there, literally idle. And they were the big cranes that would normally be used to move that cargo off the ships, and they weren't moving. They were sitting there. And he said, I've been watching these big cranes sitting here for days, and they have not moved. There's trucks that are sitting here waiting to move the cargo, and they're still sitting here. So it is not about we don't have enough trucks to move the stuff. So then that makes me think, okay, so what's really going on? Which is, again, to your point, looking at this thing from a different perspective. What is really happening where we have cargo or imports that should be coming into the country that are not coming into the country? What's causing this bottleneck, or who's causing this bottleneck? And then that gets you to start, as you said again, looking a little deeper into what's going on. Now, I know that you've done that research, but I also know that you're a bit reluctant to share everything that you know, and I understand why. You don't want to get banned, because I'm glad you brought that up. Can you please share with the audience your trials and tribulations with, in particular, TikTok? Because this is like your third go-round, right?
Yes, this is my third account.
Okay, so what happened in the first two counts?
Well, the first account, it's, from what I've come to understand, is if you can understand the algorithm and you can understand its process, you can continually throw yourself into the algorithm and have it benefit you, which is precisely what I did. And because I did that, it garnered too much attention at one time. So it basically, it didn't necessarily red flag me, but it did essentially.
Okay. Okay.
So I spoke about some things happening here in Indiana, specifically where I'm at. Um, this it's not an event. It is a very true and very real thing that happens across the entirety of the country. There are certain camps that exist
Okay.
that I talked about, and it's relatively common knowledge. This information's been released by our intelligence professionals. It's been released 20 years ago, so it's very well known. But a lot of people, at least in the TikTok realm, weren't privy of this. They had no idea. So I put out this initial video talking about this, which ended up being a 3-part long video series. And the first video pulled in about 2.5 million views in a couple of days. And the second part pulled in, before it was removed, 1.8. And
Wow.
basically, as soon as it went to 1.9, that was when the issue started. So I started bringing in too much attention. And what happened as a result of these videos was I quickly became, of that specific topic, the #1 Google search trend in
Wow.
a span of about 3 days of posting this video.
Okay.
I was, the town that I spoke about was on Google Trends as the #1 search trend of that specific category in about 3 days, and I pulled in about 125,000 followers in about a span of 3 or 4 days.
Oh my God.
So you can see the amount of attention that kind of just happened just all at once.
Yeah.
And I'd had that account for since we had access to TikTok, so at least a year.
Okay.
With only, at the time, I went from literally 1,000 viewers or 1,000 followers to 125,000 in a span of a couple days. So you
Oh
can
my
see how that
God.
would be problematic.
Yeah.
So after all of this had happened, some smaller news places had apparently taken interest in this, and then the day after, the entire account had been banned. Yeah. So naturally, what I did was I created another account. I said, okay, I'll do another one. And
Okay.
I went to review the terms and conditions, and I read the entirety of the guidelines front to back. And I started to post again. And I had this account for roughly 2 weeks, pulled in another 25,000 followers. And within that span of 2 weeks, I had only one violation from a live video, talking about a subject that wasn't allowed at the time, apparently. I appealed it, and it was approved.
Okay.
And the day after, the account was banned again. So that kind of lit the fire in me, and I said, "This is a problem."
Yeah.
I'm speaking about things that our intelligence professionals speak about and have been released for public knowledge. We are allowed to know these things. Why am I being restricted from speaking about these things? This is not a narrative that I think is healthy for us. And just because it seems scary doesn't make it any more or less true.
Exactly.
And we shouldn't be afraid of the truth. We should, it should help to make us more aware of our surroundings.
I agree.
And of course, you get two crowds of people from these things. You get the people who say that it scares them, and then you get people who are just ready to go. And for lack of better words, I like to meet it somewhere in the middle. We have to meet it with some relative level of level-headedness and rationality about us, and we can't really deviate too much from that, because when we act on our emotions, we tend to make really poor decisions.
Yep. I agree.
So I have the other video that you were referring to is, I think, roughly at about 1.8 million at this point in time.
Wow.
But other things have transpired since that, and I've met a lot of wonderful people, and like yourself,
Well, thank you.
and it's kind of led me to understand that, at least in today's world, what we don't need to hear are the shock value things. There are many people out there who very much want to connect with other people and
Yeah.
connect with themselves, and a lot of the people, a majority of the comments have been hundreds of thousands of people saying, I'm awake to this, but what do I do from here? I have
Right.
no idea what to do.
Yep. Yep.
So I listened and naturally kind of altered my content toward that, and I started pushing under that belief of our capabilities and what we can do as people and how we can best do that to be self-serving and be serving for other people as well.
Okay. Okay. And in doing that, I guess my thing is, have you, besides being banned from that particular platform, have you noticed any other changes in your life that just don't necessarily fit, or has this awakened any additional awareness for you to look at things and say, "Hey, wait a minute, that doesn't," kind of the way that you talked about, and going back to the Matrix connotation, um, where you look at something and you're like, "Okay, that shouldn't be there." Has that occurred or no?
I like I kind of said, I don't question things.
Okay.
I things happen for us, and I who would I be to question it? If I did, it would go against everything that I talked about in my videos. And certain things happen, and everything happens all the time. Everything does. No matter what it is, it's whether it's good or it's bad, there everything is always happening.
Okay.
And the thing that I try to remind people of is kind of how it seems like in today's world we've lost our connection.
Mm,
And I try to remind people that that should be the foundation of who we are as people, is the human connection. Because we can connect with other people, we can therefore connect with ourselves, and we can find out a little bit about who we are, just as we're finding out a little bit about who we are as we speak.
yep. Yep.
And it kind of, to kind of explain that a little bit further, you were kind of talking about your story and how it led you to travel and how all of these things happened, and you met your fork in the road, whereas one road would have been very difficult for you, and it seemed like you started down that path, but then you understood that it was not good for you, and you had the ability to look within yourself and do something about it.
Right.
And a lot of people can't do that, and that is a very incredibly huge step, because it's the first one and it's the most important step.
Hmm.
And because this happened for you, from what I can ascertain is, it seems like you realized that it happened for you, and you, in the process, you traveled all over the place, and I'm sure you saw some wonderful sights, but most importantly, it sounds like you met a very wonderful person. And I can bet that that wonderful person that's in your life doesn't care what you look like,
Oh,
because the face does not make the person, the heart maketh man.
yes. Yes. Jake, you just said a mouthful, man, because um I mean, we all have our preferences, and I think in general I meet the criteria of her preference. But the thing that I was most worried about was my face. And her thing was, I think not only that you're fine looking, I think you're cute. And it blew me away because I didn't feel cute. I still struggle with that, Jake. I still struggle with the whole the inability to smile in a normal fashion. The fact that my eyes aren't the way they used to be, and it takes people like yourself, and people like my wife, my mother, of course, and my children to say, "Daddy, we love you, whoever you are," because we still know who that guy is prior
Hmm.
to the accident. We know you. You haven't changed. There's certain aspects that have changed physically, but the core of who you are as a person has not changed. And that's what has helped me to stabilize the concerns in my head. Because in my head, what I hear sometimes is, "You're totally different now. You're uglier than what you used to be." People are always going to be questioning whether or not you have a mental imbalance, so on and so forth. They're going to question your ability overall. So, I, as I've gotten older. I have come to grips with what is going on in my life in that way, and I understand that at some point we're all going to get, old and wrinkled and everything else, prayerfully. And as that happens, these things that we put so much value in, they don't really matter. What matters is, like you said, the connection, the love, the core of who you are as a person. So I thank you so much for bringing that to light. And I don't know. I guess for people who either have gone through something similar to what I've gone through, or people who just have issues with the physical thing, period, it's sometimes good to hear from somebody on the outside saying you're okay. I did a post about the accident where during the actual accident, I had this mantra that I was saying to myself, where I'm saying, literally, I'm like trapped in my vehicle. And I know that it's bad. I don't know how bad, but I know it's bad. And because I can't move, and because of what's going on, I'm saying to myself, you're okay. You're going to be okay. You're okay. You're going to be okay. And I just stayed over and over again, because in my head, I was starting to freak out. I was freaking out because I couldn't move. I was like stuck. And I think that because I've watched that video that I love of yours many, many times over again, because each
Thank
time
you.
I watch it, I get the exact same feeling that I got, almost like a drug, the same feeling that I got the first time that I watched it. And it was so enjoyable, and it's still so enjoyable. And it helps me, truthfully, feel, when I'm having those down moments, it helps me to feel better. It helps me to feel like, you know what? One, you gotta, snap out of it, get control, understand that you are in control. Because you have that control, utilize it in a way that's positive. Stop being so hard on yourself. And as you said in the post, stop taking yourself so seriously. Stop it. Gotta
Hmm.
step my face to you a little bit. You stop it. Relax. You're gonna be okay. So I think as you continue to post, I think you're only going to get bigger. Just a side note, everybody. So when I first started following Jake on TikTok, he had somewhere around 125,000 followers. The next day, he had 136,000. I'm like, wait a minute. Just last night, I mean, it was like 11 o'clock at night. He had 125,000 followers. He now has 136. When I last looked, I guess it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, I think he had like 147,000 followers. And I'm like, what is going on with this guy? I mean, I want what he had, because he got these folks following him like crazy. And to that point, the video of yours, or one of the videos of yours that went viral, was actually picked up by someone who is somewhat popular.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. She's very popular.
She
Um,
is, yeah.
and I happen to be, I guess, I don't really believe in luck, but I happen to be in the right place at the right time, where I caught one of your live episodes. And I wanted to do that kind of for research. I wanted to get a feeling of the guy that I was going to be talking with on my show. And I'm so glad that I did, because it only confirmed what I already thought about you, that you connect with people very, very well. And I saw a person that I feel that I can trust. But during that live post, when I logged onto it, you were talking with a young lady. I think her name is it the real Maddie, or what does she go by?
Hattie Mae.
Hattie Mae. I'm sorry, that's it.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, Hattie Mae. So for those who don't know, Tyler Perry's Madea movies is in it. But this young lady was on or in at least one of those movies, right, Jake?
Yes.
And she actually connected with you, but I don't want to steal your glory. Can you tell the story of how you came in contact with her?
That was all her doing.
Okay.
The video that you're talking about, she actually caught wind of it, and it came across her For You page on TikTok, and she put it on her Instagram.
Okay.
And coincidentally, out of all the millions of people who did find it, one person was a mutual follower on Instagram of her and myself.
Wow.
Out of 2 million people. And
Huh.
he messaged me actually and said, hey, this actress found your video and put it on her Instagram. And I tried to message him back. I said, who is it? and he never replied. And then about an hour later, there were a couple other comments that I saw, because I tell people this all, and it's true, is that I read every single comment that anybody posts on any of my videos, and it's thousands. And I've read every single one. And I saw two people who commented and said, hey, she shared this. And I said, okay, who is it? Somebody send me a link. Somebody give me a name, please.
Right.
And so I can at least go in and say thanks for getting the, helping get the word out a little bit. And they said it was Patrice Lovely. And I read that and I was like, no way. Are you kidding me? Because I know who she is.
Okay.
And I was like, no. So I went and I looked up her Instagram, and sure enough, it's right there, the very first video on her page.
Wow.
And I showed it to my wife, and I was like, babe, look at this. This is Ma. This is Hattie Mae. And she's like, oh my gosh, she shared your video? I was like, yeah, she absolutely did. But no, she shared it, and basically the only thing that I did was I liked the video.
Okay.
And the only comment that I left was, I was like, hey, that's me. Like, I was excited about it. I don't care. Some people get upset about, copywriting and, all of that stuff. I don't care. I'm not here to, I don't care about having 100 million followers. I don't. I care about reaching out and touching one person. And, luckily one of those, it was you. And the other one, it was her. Yeah. And the next morning, I was working on a few things, building a website and all that, but she actually messaged me, and she said, hey, just curious, how'd you find out that I shared your video? And I said, this guy told me, but I'll try to find it again and I'll show it to you. And I ended up finding it later. I screenshot it for her, but she and I were talking about things, and she's like, she's like, that video spoke to me, and you wouldn't believe it. And she's like, everything happens for a reason. I came across your video for a reason. And she's like, I watched all your videos. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like,
Okay.
I was like, I'm a nobody over here, but okay, continue, and she's like, your videos, she's like, you're speaking the truth out here, and this stuff needs to be heard. And she's like, I'm going to do everything I can. She's like, that's in my power to make sure everything gets heard. She's like, I want you to fill my mind with all this stuff so I can share with my crew, And I was like, yeah, I'm happy to. Whatever you need. What I figured it was just like, she might reach out every once in a while, like message with a random like question, like, hey, what's this? Or what's this mean? Right. But, she's like, and she was completely genuine, and just absolutely how she is how she is. And she said, here's my number. Keep that under your belt. Don't tell anybody. And she's like, text me. She's like, I want to call you. I want to talk to you. And I'm just like, I'm floored by this whole thing just happening. And so I was like, okay, here's my number. So we traded numbers, and I gave it a little bit of a break because she's busy. I'm busy. And I reached out to her later in the afternoon, and I said, hey, I texted her and I said, hey, this is Jake. Just wanted to make sure you had my number. Just wanted to make sure you remembered who I was, and, make sure that you have my number. I don't want you to lose it or whatever in case you need anything. And she's like, if you're not busy,
call me.
I was like, hey, call away. I'm, you're the busy one here. So
right. Busier. So, right.
So she called me, and I was just floored. I was like, man, in the back of my mind, I'm just like, hopefully this isn't like some sort of trick or something,
Right.
And she and I talked for an hour and a half straight, just about everything. And she's sweet, man. I love her to death. She's one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life, and most genuine. And she heard my kids playing in the background, and she's like, oh, you got kids, and I was like, yeah, you want to meet them, So I put her on FaceTime, and so I got to meet her. I got to meet her friend Rita. She's wonderfully nice as well, and my kids adore her. They're all about her. My 2-year-old's usually shy, but he was just talking it up. She's like, hi, how you doing, buddy? And he was just blah 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 blah. But no, she and I talked for we've talked quite a few times. We've talked every day since, here and there. Um, but we've got a few things we've discussed, and we're actually going to go on a camping trip here pretty soon with our families. So,
Yeah, I heard that, and I was so excited for both of y'all. What
hmm
I got from y'all's interaction was a genuine connection.
yeah,
You had mentioned on your live, that you hadn't known her that long, or haven't known her that long, but you feel like you've known her, forever. And I got
yeah,
that vibe from the two of you. As I listened to y'all engage in conversation, there was a lot of love that was being shared from on both sides. A lot
hmm
of, I love you, and I'm like, oh man, this is so awesome.
hmm
Although I'm not as familiar with her, I did do a little bit of research, and I saw that, um, you know, I guess at the end of the day, to your point, no matter where people are in their lives, whether it be famous or one who's not so famous, whether it be somebody like yourself who has some really important things to share, we all have our own walk that we have to embark on, and that sometimes allows us to connect. And when we make those connections, we have to make the most out of those opportunities. And I think the
hmm
both of you were able to do that, in that she's a very popular and busy person. She has her acting career going on, but she made time for you and your family. That to me is just mind blowing. At the same time, here you are, getting yourself out there in a way that's building you up very, very quickly. But you made time to engage in conversation with her and share your family. That to me, again, is awesome. I think, like what you said, what is missing for us in this world right now is the ability to genuinely connect with another person. The
hmm
ability to say, you know what, let's go ahead and let our hair down. Let's take off the makeup and get back to the fact that we are humans. And as humans, we have, a lot of the same things that we go through, trials and tribulations, ups and downs. But at the end of the day, if we can connect, one on one, we may be able to help each other with something. Like you were able to help me through that moment of, I wouldn't necessarily say despair, but I would say, I guess, concern that I had for myself in terms of what I was feeling at that moment. And because of it, it brought forth emotions and feelings in me that made me feel like I really need to check this person out. I really need to try to connect with him. So when I reached out to you, it wasn't with the getting you on my show. It was more about, I just want to know who this guy is. I just want to make that connection with him to let him know that, hey, what you were saying, it has reached at least me, and I want to thank you for that. And I'll say this now. Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much, for putting that post out, because, as you said, it was what I needed at that time, and what I think I'm going to continue needing, only because for me, it's almost like a shot of happiness that I need, a feeling of confirming what, sometimes I need to know that it's going to be okay. One, it's not as serious as you think it is. Three, it's going to be just fine. But you have to know that at the end of the day, you have to be aware, you have to open your eyes, and you're in control. It's not something where things are being done to you, as you say. They're being done for you. And I don't know, those things, as basic as they sound, until you actually listen to and, put that in your head and that can make it make sense, it's not going to actually change anything. But when you say it in the way that you say it, with your matrix voice, it really, really imparts so much on me, because it's done in a way that allows me to actually absorb what you're telling me.
yeah, yep. I
Yeah.
understand.
So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, you and I could talk forever, because I think I could talk forever, because I was telling, side note, audience, I was telling Jake when he connected with me, because I'm sorry, let me back up. When I reached out to him to thank him for that post, um, I sent the message with the intent that, okay, maybe he'll read it, maybe he won't, but he'll never comment back. Well, no, he commented back, and when I talked to him about potentially coming onto my show, and he said, "Sure, I would love to do it," I turned into like a 13-year-old schoolgirl. I was waiting by the phone, waiting for Jake's call. I'm like, "Did he call yet? Did he call yet? No, he has to call yet. Okay, let me check again. Did he call yet?" And when he finally got on the phone with me, it was, he was the same person that he was in those posts, in those videos that have gotten millions of views. He's not any different. I mean, he's a regular, genuine person, and that to me is what makes you great. And I know you won't take that, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. That's the greatness of who you are, and that you don't take yourself so seriously that, yeah, I can get 100,000 followers in a matter of days, with a snap of a finger. Yeah, I can get millions of views of my posts, but at the end of the day, guess what? I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a human, I'm a man. With all that being said, I'm just a regular guy. Do
Yeah.
you ever have you sat back yet and looked at what you've been able to do in such a short amount of time, Jake? And I'm not just talking about the social media stuff. I'm talking about everything.
I'm very much under the impression, for me, and what I try to help other people understand is, I'm proud of the things that I've done that take time to build.
Okay.
And the way that I explain it to people is that this entire thing that we do, this life, is very much a game. And once the game is over,
here it is.
All the pieces go back in the box.
I love that. I love when you say that part, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I say it a lot, and I say it often, because I think that we need to hear that. So it's not the toy money that we leave behind. It's not the pieces. The cars go away, the home goes away, everything goes away, and the only thing that we leave behind here is legacy. I have nothing to leave here but my children. And if I really want to feel like I've made an impact, my job is to make sure that my children have a stable home life. They're raised to be 3 strong young men, like I hope that they would. But more importantly, I make time every single day to tell all 3 of my boys that I love them. And I tell them every single day, so they know. And that's the important thing. They're not going to care what vehicle I drove. They're not going to care about what the house looks like. They don't care about any of that. When I'm gone from here, they're going to remember everything that we got to do together. They're going to remember what kind of man I was. And hopefully they will emulate that in some way, shape, or form, because I do that for my dad. I very much looked up to my father. And I want them also to understand, I saw your message and I immediately looked at your content, and I wanted to get a gauge of what kind of man you were. And 10 years of law enforcement, you get pretty good at that. And I listened to the way that you talk to people and how respectful you were to people. And I watched you as a person, and I said, you know what, this guy's a pretty wonderful guy. He's just a straight up honest man, and that's what I like. I don't care if you drove a Jaguar. I don't care if you drive like a 78 Buick. It doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter. What matters is I can very much tell that you have very important things on your heart, and you're not afraid to talk about those. You're straight up honest, genuine man, and that's all I looked for, and that's what I found. And none of that other stuff matters. These things are very trivial and very menial. It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. The face doesn't matter. I don't care about that. Nobody else should either. It's very superficial, and even that goes away too. We're all going to get old and ugly, and we're all going to fall apart. You're just further ahead than I am. I'm going to fall apart too.
Yep.
You got a head start, man. But it doesn't matter. All of these very petty divisions that we place upon ourselves. I don't know you, but the same thing that Patrice said is, she said, Jake, she said, I don't care about who you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you live. I don't care about any of that. And I'm going to say the same thing to you, is I don't care about any of that. And we need to we need to learn to reapply that human connection. And I know you better now, and I feel like I can say I know you better, and I love you for that, man. You're a wonderful guy, and I think that you shouldn't take that for granted, because you're a very genuine and rare person in this world, and we need more people like you to be here.
Thank you, Jake. You know what, audience? I did good. I didn't cry because Jake tried. He was taking me there. I'm gonna start crying. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding, Jake. But thank you so much for sharing some time with me, Jake. Thank you for sharing those beautiful, kind words. Before I let you go, because I know you have a lot going on. You know, your week is, I'm sure, busy with your kids and your wife.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that everybody has every way possible to get a hold of you, but I also wanted to talk real briefly, if you know, as long as you want, about your other business, because you do have another business that seemed to be getting a lot of press on that live. A lot of people were, you know, buying products. So
Yeah.
go right ahead and tell us about that, if you don't mind.
So I started a coffee supply company, and I'm actually wearing the hoodie. I don't know if you can see the logo, but it's kind of worn off a little bit. This was the very first one I've had, and it's almost 3 years old, and it's worn and faded now, but it's still my favorite hoodie.
Okay.
But it's called the Bearded Bean Coffee Company.
Bearded Bean Coffee Company.
And the logo it's just a coffee bean with my beard. I photoshopped my beard onto the coffee bean.
Really?
Because I get a lot of comments about my beard, and I said, how can I piece this together to make it marketable and make it unique? So
Right.
that's what I came up with, you know?
Okay.
So I started this just because I really love coffee. I mean, I have some now, but I saw it as a means for me to do something for myself. Unfortunately, one of my weaknesses is I want to not work on somebody else's dream. I want to work on my own.
Yep.
So
Me too.
I surprisingly, I got very lucky with my business as well. As I started, and the person that I looked up to in the entrepreneurship world the most was Gary Vaynerchuk, and I have consumed all of his content that he's ever put out up until probably last year, until I grew my own wings and sprouted my own wings. So I needed to hear what I needed, and thanks to him, I started a business because of him. He inspired me to do it. But I was also lucky enough that I got to spend some personal time with Gary, and we went through about an hour span on the phone about my business, and we basically tore it apart and went through every avenue. And I was so nervous to talk to this man, because I've been watching his stuff for, you know, the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm just like, oh man, I hopefully, you know, he doesn't tell me, you know, something I don't want to hear, or tell me that
Right.
you know, it's going to be a failure sort of deal. And this whole time I'm explaining to him my business, how I set up the model, how I set up the content, how I advertise it, how I market it. And literally the whole time he's doing his very Gary Vaynerchuk thing, where he sits here like this, and it just, you know, just completely straight face. And I'm just like, man, he's just not budging, you know? And he's like, you know what? He's like, I'm just going to tell you real quick. He's like, it sounds like you got your ducks in a row. And I was like, okay,
Yeah,
I like that. He's like, you know, you keep doing these things and you do it every day. He's like, you're going to be fine.
Wow.
And I was just like, man, thank you so much for that. You know, I got to spend an hour with Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, how does that happen? But so it's been almost 3 years now I've had this business, and it's all order online. It ships right to your door. You don't have to go to a store. You can order it from anywhere in the world. But it's beardedbeancoffeecompany.com.
Okay.
And I've even made everybody a 15% off code if you want to use it, and just type in the word TikTok and it'll give you 15% off. So.
All right. So let's stop a second, because that's important. So for those who are coffee drinkers and want to try the Bearded Bean coffee, please use that code to get 15% off. And you know, who knows, maybe when you comment how good it is, he'll reach out to you and say, hey, thank you.
I will. I do every time.
I believe it. So if you can, share with the audience the ways that they can connect with you, so they can kind of absorb that wonderful content that I've absorbed.
Depending on whatever medium they want to. I've actually built a website and kind of made that the central hub for everything. But it's just jakediles.com. And at the bottom of the homepage, you'll see a bubble link that's clickable for every platform that I have that you can find. And it's basically every major platform.
Nice. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up the show at this point. I definitely want to thank you so much, Jake, for taking some time out to share with me a bit about yourself. I know I probably hogged the conversation because I was like a 13-year-old
No?
schoolgirl, all excited to talk to you. But I highly encourage those who are interested in hearing more of Jake and less of Juan. Check out his content on TikTok. Check out his content on Instagram. He's also has a YouTube channel. Um, Please just do yourself a favor and open your mind enough to see what it is that he's talking about. Because I think for many of those who are listening to or watching this video, you're going to get a lot out of what he says. I mean, it's not that he's talking for hours and hours, but it's just that in the small amount of time that he is talking, it's so impactful. And I feel like that I've been changed as a result of it. I'm looking forward to continuing our connection, Jake. I'm hoping
Me too.
that at some point we'll come back to my form or yours, whatever, just to kind of catch up and chop it up a little bit. Um, uh, I will thank your family for allowing me to steal the time away from them of yours, and I look forward to what you're going to be doing next because as you're growing so quickly, to me it's only inevitable that you're going to get an even bigger platform to speak from if they don't if they don't shut you down first. But in the meantime, if that happens, then we're just going to find another way. You're going to come here, or somehow we're going to make sure that you get out what you have to say, because I think a lot of the information that's being shared by you is stuff that people are not aware of. They're just not aware, or they haven't had the opportunity to look at it from the perspective that you get it. So, with that being said, Jake, any last words you want to share before we shut it down?
Just one thing. I think you're going to find out that people are going to gravitate toward you for the same reasons. A lot of people just want it like it is nowadays. We don't want the frills. We don't want any of the fancy bows. We don't want any of that. You're a straight up guy, and as long as you continue to do things the way that you do them and just be you, then you're going to be fine too. And you will, man. I can tell too. So don't undercut yourself. You'll be fine.
Thank you, Jake. Again, before I start crying, because Jake's trying to get me there again, y'all. I'm just going to wrap it up the way I always do. Communicate, y'all.